there's a couple words that you're going to hear, perspective and prospective. So Perspective is our open source tool. It's an interactive data analytics or data visualization tool that is really well suited for large scale or very fast streaming data analytics, so data that's moving. It's easily embeddable into a web app. We're going to get into it. We're going to see how it works. But yeah, you can just drag and drop it into any web app or mobile app that you're developing. It's been around actually for about 10 years. It came out of JP Morgan, where they were using it for high frequency trading, and then JP Morgan decided to open source it. Now, Prospective is the company or commercial company behind Perspective, and that's who I work for. That's where Prospective adds some additional functionality. It's used for maybe non-technical users too, or data scientists where they can go and just grab data and start analyzing it and then share that with other folks. So 2 terms there, perspective and prospective. They're pretty interchanged in my demo. Now, why us? Why data visuals? There's so many data visualization tools out there. There is Grafana, there's Superset, there is Tableau, even Power BI, there's Plugly, there's millions of hopefully not millions, but there's a lot of data visualization tools out there. What's different about us? 2 things that we say a lot. One is local first. So the interactive data visualization tool that you see, it's all running on the device, on the browser itself. There's no like backend that we send the code to. A lot of data visualization need like a backend server that they use for querying. When the user is like slicing and dicing and doing like different pivots and different aggregates, again, those go to the backend server. But for us, that's not the case. It actually is running on the browser, on the mobile device itself. So it's much more lightweight. How we do that is it's actually written in C++, and it's compiled to run on WebAssembly. So if you're familiar with WebAssembly or WASM, that's what we use. That's what we use to run on the device. What that means is that it's, again, very lightweight and very highly interactive and responsive. So when the user's clicking on things, you'll see things happen very fast. There's no lag. Again, nothing's going back to the server. It also is the speed. So you think of like something like Grafana that's updating, in every second. What we do, we can update hundreds of thousands of rows in like 100 millisecond or millisecond range, which actually you'll see in a minute. We do that by using like Apache Arrow for a lot of data transfer. Again, like it's written in C and it's running on your browser. What that means for the business is scale. It's like the third thing that's kind of hidden there. Because we're running everything on the browser itself and it's running at high volumes or high data frequencies, you can scale. If you're building applications that needs to scale to like hundreds of thousands or millions of users, then we're probably the only choice. Because again, you don't really scale a backend server or cloud resources as much. We're using the local devices, so it can scale to a lot more users than your typical data visualization tool. I promise that was the only slide. So this is, if you like to follow the workshop, I've made a GitHub repository, and you can scan the QR code. You can actually follow along because our tool is interactive and it's all in mobile. So if you want, there's even a dashboard there that you can interact on your phone or on your laptop and come along as for the ride as we go through. So let me show you first where we heading. And if you are, bear with me. So this is one of our dashboard. What I'm going to do is we're going to build something that loads data into a DuckDB, into a WASM DuckDB database, and then it uses Perspective, our UI, to visualize that data. And right now, this is querying data that's sitting on DuckDB in real time and is updating, I think, every like 500 millisecond. But we can crank that up to like every 150 millisecond, and you see it's moving faster. It's also highly interactive, so we can like do a different bar chart or graph, and you can see things that's moving. So, but before that, let's see what kind of data we're gonna deal with. If you go to that GitHub repo, there is a dashboard here that you can click on, and that opens a Prospective dashboard. And this is our tool. It's free to use. So you can just go to perspective.co and just start using it. Or you can create an account and it gives you a little bit of more functionality. But let's start by really looking into the data set and giving you some more notes of what this is. So let's come and build actually a new dashboard here. One of the things that I have in Prospective is this sources tab. So right away, I can connect to any sort of data that I have, and that could be static data, like things that are on S3 or HTTPS, or it could be data that's moving. So maybe it's coming from InfluxDB or NATS or Kafka. So we have these data adapters. So let's connect to HTTPS, and instead of this data file, I'm going to give it the link that has my data file. And I'm just going to say connect. So that pulled the data already, and it pulled about 480,000 rows from that from S3 bucket. What this data represents, it's actually real data. It's U.S. power plants. So all the big power plants around the U.S. and how much energy they're outputting. And it has some different columns like where they're from, the city, state. It's got the fuel type, so what they use to actually generate data, if it's like they're running fossil fuels, if it's nuclear, if it's wind, etc. And I think this data set is for 4 years, so it's from 2020 all the way to 2024. But what we can do is right away start slice and dicing this, and that's where the fun comes. So what do you think is the most power producing state in US is? So let's aggregate by state. And then I want to see only the net generation, so how much they're outputting. And then let's order that by net generation, and then let's make that backwards. Texas, I guess, is the first one, and it generates around 1 billion megawatt hours in a year. And then California, et cetera. But let's do it a different way. So let's do it by fuel type. I want to see, do we run more fossil fuels? Do we do like nuclear? What do we do in US? So yes, I guess gas is the first one. The nuclear power plants generating more, but wind, believe it or not, is one of the biggest producers, and it almost as much as the nuclear power plants. But I don't want to see that in, maybe that's better in a tree view. So I want to see it that way. Now let's split it by like states, and then right away it's like in each state, like what percentage of their energy coming from, what kind of data source. But you get the idea. I can connect to a data source and start asking questions and start doing different charts. And it's highly interactive. As soon as I click on something, again, everything's happening on my browser, and I can see the results here. Now, let's come back here in this Jupyter notebook that I have, or in this dashboard. And this is a little bit more complex dashboard than the one that we were building a second ago. And what you can see here, that it's also our tool, one of the features is that it can be used for people who are a little bit more technical. So I could connect to the data source and start doing that if I was a non-technical person. But if I want to start manipulating the data, I can also do that side by side by running some like Python code that's doing stuff and then using that to feed my dashboard or the data that I have here. So what are we going to do here? We have two data sources. We have the power plants and we have the United States Postal Service data, so all the zip codes, and that has some population information too. And we're just going to start running these cells here. So I'm going to run this one. The first one takes a little while to run because it's generating the kernel, and after that, it's everything simple. So in this case, this little code reads if I have an existing data source like the plants or the zips, which I've already imported. It shows you just how to read those into the notebook, and then I can also do something to them and then plot them back on the graph. So when I run this, I'm running all of my power plants information, then plotting back like just 100,000 rows back into, and this little popped up. So again, it shows you the interactivity. Now, let's do something more interesting. Let's start a DuckDB instance in WASM. And again, all of this is running on my browser. So DuckDB is also running on WASM, WebAssembly. So all of this is happening in the browser that I have here. So I ran DuckDB. This started DuckDB instance, and then I'm just generating a random data. Now, in this notebook cell, I'm going to materialize the table, so that plant's data frame that I read a little bit ago from my sources. I'm going to materialize that into DuckDB, and then I'm going to run a SQL against it. I got to get the result and then plot that back into Prospective. Right? Let's do that. And what this one does, you see it's selecting just like the renewable energy, so like wind, hydro, solar, and I can come in here and again do any sort of like aggregation or whatever I want to do here. Now, the nice thing is, once I have this set up the way I want it, I can click save here and I get a little URL link that I can just drag and drop that over Slack to any of my colleagues, and they can start this dashboard and then go do their analytics, like whatever they want to do from there as well. Now let's do something a little bit more complex. That was a pretty simple SQL, and we can probably actually do that in Prospective itself. Now this SQL loads the zip data frame into DuckDB as well, and then it uses that to see what are like which power plants are serving like the biggest population around them. Because in my zips code, in my postal codes, I have the population data, and I'm going to do a radius search. So I have the latitude, longitude of the power plant, and I'm going to have the latitude, longitude of the zip code. So I'm going to do like a 25-mile circle around each power plant and get all the population in that. So you can see a little bit more complex SQL here that's using like a Harvard-Scene. It gets the circumference of the Earth, and it's using some calculation to do that join with the zips code, and then pulling that data and then graphing it and ranking it, doing a window function to rank the results in DuckDB as far as saying what are the most power-hungry regions. Like per capita, they're using the most megawatts in that region. So let's run this. All right, we'll close this. And you see the results. So it seems like that power plant, it generates about, per capita, people are using like 48 megawatts in its region. And again, we can start doing different aggregations on this or different visualization, and things move pretty fast. Any questions thus far? All right. We'll keep going. And now let's just start building the application that we had here. So all of that was in Prospective, but in Perspective, which is the open source, you can also build these dashboards yourself, and you can embed Perspective in any web app or React project that you have. So let's do the code here. So what I have here is a simple node or web application. It has an HTML file, and I have some JavaScripts that attach to it. And I'm going to build the application that I just showed you guys. So the main part is this demo HTML, and on top, I'm doing some imports to get the Perspective library. So I'm doing the CDN imports to get the Perspective libraries. I also use a component UI, which is called Shoelace, to get like nice buttons and like tabs and everything. So I'm also importing the CDN for that. I have a little bit of styling here. And you can see down here, I create some of the buttons. So I want to say, hey, load DuckDB, load the Perspective. So I create some of those buttons. I include my JavaScripts. But the main thing is how I embed Perspective Viewer. So Perspective Viewer, I told you it's very easy to embed because it's just an HTML component. So I just drag pretty much, I can drag and drop this component into any application that I have, and that creates one of those interactive perspective viewer in my web app. Now let's see what we have as far as the JavaScript here. So I have a DuckDB, and all this script does, it installs DuckDB as a WASM. So again, in the client or in the browser, it downloads all the WASM code, and then it creates a DuckDB instance, and it connects to it. And this is going to be running on my browser. Again. And I also have Perspective, which just creates a Perspective client, and this creates a Perspective engine. Then I have a little bit of code here that attaches to every button on my application. The first one, it loads DuckDB, so it creates a table, and it loads that power plant data into it, and then shows the resulting number of rows. The second query connects to another button that I have, and it submits a query that queries that DuckDB database and puts different predicate or conditions, and then loads the Perspective viewer and puts that on the screen and loads the viewer with the data that it gets back. All right, let's now come here and let's go to our main or just the default. And can you guys see this? I can make this a little bigger. So this is the first button. So I can click this and it loaded, again, 480,000. And then this is the second button that queries now DuckDB and puts that on the screen. So now that you see the Perspective viewer, the HTML component now gets the data, renders the data, and I can still interact with this. So if I want to configure this by a different way, we can do that. And I can also change the settings. So here, all the different buttons that I put in. So I can go to a different month. Let's just show all the hydro plants and then run that. And the data changes. Okay. So I just build with few lines of code. I have an application, again, that's running completely on the browser. It has DuckDB. It loads DuckDB with data, and it can query that and then view the data and give it like an interactive view over that data set, all on the web application. Again, if you want to try this, it's on GitHub. You can download the code, and I'm gonna come back to my slides here. The dashboard that I have is also here, and if you have any questions, you can email me at parham@prospective.co, or just go to perspective.co and just try doing this yourself. Thank you. That's it.